Anton sat in the center of the cramped room. The walls were shedding their plaster, turning into fine gray dust that settled in his hair and lungs. Around him, the air was thick with paper.
Bills rose from the floor like a swarm of insects, slapping against his cheeks and eyes.
Stinging with every impact, he pulled his knees to his chest,
locking his arms tight to keep from shaking. The pressure was constant. He leaned forward, eyes fixed on the floorboards, watching the wood grain warp and buckle. The sound started as a low groan, then shifted into a high-pitched splintering. He did not have time to stand.
A jagged crack raced across the floor, widening into a black void. Gravity vanished. The room tilted violently, and Anton slid, fingers clawing at the dust.
Before the platform fell away entirely, he plummeted into a blinding tunnel of neon numbers and floating coins. The world blurred into streaks of electric blue and gold. He spun, unable to find an anchor, falling deeper into the hum of the vortex until the light swallowed him whole. The descent ended with a bone-jarring thud. Anton hit a flat, metallic surface that hummed with static energy. He rolled, gasping, and looked up. The sky was an endless grid of glowing lines. Standing over him was a creature of sharp angles and impossible geometry. It possessed wings crafted from clacking calculator keys, and where eyes should have been, 2 pie charts spun in rhythmic, hypnotic circles. Anton backed away, his heels scraping against the platform, but the entity moved with a sudden, fluid grace. The guide loomed, his voice a deep, resonant boom that vibrated through the floor. "Welcome, Anton. You have been playing the money game on hard mode without a tutorial." Anton scrambled to his feet, his heart hammering against his ribs. He looked at the vast, floating environment, then back at the shifting, mechanical figure. He shook his head, his hands trembling as he gestured to the glowing void. "I did not even know I was in a game." The guide paced, his wings clicking like 1,000 teeth. He stopped, leaned down until his spinning eyes were inches from Anton, and tilted his head. The realization hit Anton like a physical force. The world he had known was gone, replaced by these cold, ticking rules. The guide paced the platform, his calculator wing joints clicking with every sharp turn. He stopped,
staring down at Anton. "Exactly," the guide repeated, his voice echoing across the platform. "That is why you are losing."
Anton blinked, his breath hitching as he looked around at the infinite, uncaring grid.
He reached out to touch the air, feeling the static sting of the environment. "I worked hard," Anton insisted,
his voice cracking. "I did everything I was supposed to do," the guide scoffed, a sound like grinding gears.
He swiped a hand through the air, causing a series of jagged, glowing charts to flicker into existence.
He pointed to a downward sloping line. "You are playing with a broken compass. You sprinted in the wrong direction and called it progress."
Anton watched the lines shift, his stomach turning as he recognized the patterns of his own past failures. Every choice he had made in that crumbling room now looked like a deliberate step toward this void. The guide leaned in, his spinning pie chart eyes locking onto Anton.
"You did not lose because the world was against you. You lost because you entered a game without knowing the rules,
and you refused to look up from your own feet to see the board." The realization settled in, heavy and cold. The guide did not wait for a response. He reached into the empty air and yanked downward with both hands.
A jagged, living diagram tore through the fabric of the platform, screaming as it materialized.
It was a twisted, pulsing tangle of lines that radiated a sickly, dark light. "This is the pain curve,"
the guide roared, his voice drowned out by the metallic shrieking of the structure. Anton stared at the undulating mass,
his pulse quickening as he reached out, driven by a desperate need to understand.
The curve suddenly buckled. It surged forward like a living coil, slamming into his chest.
Anton gasped as the sheer force of it knocked him flat against the grid. The diagram did not just sit on him. It pressed down, its weight compounded by the heavy, suffocating memories of every bad habit and missed opportunity he had ever known.
He clawed at the platform, his fingers slipping on the cold, vibrating surface. He tried to push it off,
but the more he struggled, the tighter the curve cinched around his lungs. Panic flared.
Hot and sharp, he was pinned, anchored to the floor by the physical manifestation of his own lack of direction.
The guide loomed above, watching with spinning eyes as Anton fought for every shallow, ragged breath.
The platform beneath Anton groaned. A deep, seismic tremor ripped through the grid, throwing the guide off balance.
Far beyond the edge, the horizon shattered. A volcano erupted, not with fire, but with blinding,
molten words that tore through the sky. Responsibility, discipline, direction. They rained down like molten iron,
striking the platform with the force of falling stars. The first impact caught Anton in the shoulder, driving him deeper into the floorboards. The heat was searing, smelling of ozone and raw change.
He tried to roll away, but another word direction slammed into the space beside his head, scorching the air. Each collision was a physical blow, a heavy weight that shattered his remaining defenses. He felt the impact of responsibility rattle his teeth, forcing him to witness the sheer mass of what he had avoided for so long.
He scrambled, limbs heavy, trying to shield his face, but the debris continued to fall.
Relentless and hot, he was tossed backward, limbs flailing, until he collapsed into a heap of glowing,
hot dust. The platform was silent again, save for the crackling of the embers against his skin.
Anton lay there, trembling, his lungs burning with the metallic taste of his own transformation.
Anton pushed himself up. The glowing dust fell from his limbs in thin, shimmering sheets. He looked at the guide, who stood motionless, one hand extended toward a new, pulsing diagram that hung in the air like a rip in the sky. It hummed with a low, rhythmic vibration that resonated in Anton's chest. This was the freedom curve. It did not look like the others. It was fluid, shifting, and impossibly bright. Anton hesitated, his muscles still aching from the previous impacts. He reached out, his hand trembling as he neared the light. The curve flared, pushing back with a sudden,
intense pressure that forced his palm to recoil. He grit his teeth, leaned his entire weight forward, and slammed his hand against the center of the pulse. The reaction was instantaneous.
A shock wave of pure, golden sparks erupted from the point of contact, blinding and hot. The force caught him in the center of his chest. His feet left the platform. The air screamed as he shot upward, pulled by a sudden, violent gravity that defied the laws of the platform below. He was a rocket, accelerating through the void, leaving the weight of his past behind in a trail of fading light. Anton tore through the neon void, the air whistling past his ears like a gale. Colors bled into streaks of blue and white, blurring the horizon into a tunnel of pure light. He kicked against the rushing data streams, his legs burning as he fought to maintain his path. Thick, viscous currents of numbers tried to anchor him, wrapping around his limbs like heavy chains. But he twisted, turning his body into a blade to cut through the resistance. He felt the friction of his own momentum, a heat that grew stronger with every second of flight. He shouted into the rush,
his voice ringing clear against the silence of the void. I am not just building money. I am building a future version of me.
The words took shape, solidifying into glowing platforms beneath his boots for a fleeting heartbeat before dissolving into stardust. He was no longer reacting to the world. He was carving his own trajectory through it. The pressure in his chest eased as he leaned into the velocity, his eyes fixed on the distant, shimmering light ahead. He was accelerating, shedding the dead weight of his past with every mile, becoming something sharper, something deliberate, and something entirely his own. The momentum died as Anton hit a solid, cold surface. He stood in a room of infinite angles, surrounded by a shattered mirror that stretched toward the ceiling. Every shard held a different version of his reflection.
One version cowered in a corner, hands over his eyes. Another sat slumped in a chair,
surrounded by piles of paper. Anton walked forward, his boots clicking sharply against the floor. He stopped before the largest fragment. The reflection stared back, trapped in a cycle of hesitation. Anton reached out, his fingers brushing the jagged edge of the glass. He felt the cold bite of the surface,
then the weight of years of avoidance. "I thought money was the problem," he said, his voice echoing against the walls.
The reflection nodded in unison, a silent acknowledgement of the lie. Anton gripped the shard, pulling his hand away from the safety of the frame. He looked deep into the glass, past the surface,
and forced himself to name the ghost. It was my fear. The moment the words left his lips, the mirror groaned.
A blinding white light erupted from the cracks, turning the room into a furnace of brilliance. He stood his ground as the light surged, washing over him and burning away the last of the hesitation. Anton stepped away from the blinding light and found himself at the edge of a jagged cliff. Below him, the broke loop churned, a chaotic, spinning vortex of debt and lost potential that roared like a hurricane. He felt the pull of the abyss dragging at his heels, a familiar gravity seeking to drag him back into the cycle. He planted his feet firmly, the ground vibrating under his weight. He did not retreat. He reached out into the empty air, his fingers tracing invisible lines. "Life is hard," he commanded, the words glowing gold as they hung suspended in the void. He swiped his hand through the light, adding, "My decisions shape my future." He finished with a final, sharp stroke. "My mindset shapes my life." The words did not fade. They hardened into translucent, glowing beams that stretched across the spinning chaos. A bridge formed, solid and humming with energy. Anton exhaled, the tension in his shoulders dropping. He tested the first step, then the second. The platform held. He walked forward, leaving the abyss behind, his pace steady and deliberate. Each step on the light was a rejection of the past, a physical commitment to the path he was building with his own hands. The bridge beneath his feet pulsed as the world around him began to fray. The dark, spinning vortex of the broke loop flickered like a dying flame, its roar fading into a distant hum. Anton kept walking, his gaze fixed on the horizon where a warm, golden light was beginning to crest. He stopped for a heartbeat, turning to look back at the chaos he had escaped. The void was shrinking, losing its grip on the air, turning into nothing more than shadows. He felt no fear, only the weight of his own resolve. "You do not control life," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the quiet, fading expanse. He turned back toward the dawn, his posture relaxed, his movements fluid and unburdened. "But you control your choices," he added, each word ringing with finality. "And your choices build everything." He took another step, then another, moving deeper into the brilliance of the morning. The bridge of light dissolved into mist as he reached the edge of the new world. He did not look back again. He crossed the threshold, stepping fully into the warmth of the rising sun, leaving the game behind him for good. Please, subscribe Anton Finance.